There is a morning here in the evening, a greeting, bittersweet leaving, a page turned over, and as it is, all mixed, with the joy, the grieving, stepping forward, burdens laying, others found. What tomorrow holds can never be sure, only that there is one, and it is a morning moment.
Welcome to Bloom, a conversations podcast about anything and everything. The poem you just heard was written and read by Angelina Stanton, a street poet in Melbourne, Australia, who uses a typewriter to write poems on any topic within 15 to 20 minutes for members of the public. Angie is a familiar and much-loved face to those who frequent Swanston Street, the heart of Melbourne's central business district, and it was there that I met Angie a few weeks ago, where she wrote me the very poem you just heard with the prompt, New Beginnings, Starting Over, which I requested for a friend who was moving overseas for 6 months. In this interview, Angie and I talk about how she got interested in poetry and typewriters, her journey from New Zealand to Australia, and her favourite writer, fellow New Zealander Janet Frame. We also speak about the City of Melbourne and its recent changes to busking permits, which have aroused the ire of the performing community, as well as other social issues Angie comes face to face with while performing on the streets of Melbourne, such as homelessness, substance abuse, domestic violence, and people falling through the cracks of the system. So, Angie, thank you so much for being here today, and I was hoping you could start by telling our listeners a little bit more about how you got into writing poetry.
Hi, I think it was 2013, the end of the year, and I just recently come to Melbourne from New Zealand. I came to Melbourne, one of the main motivations was to actually explore poetry, and I just had this feeling, like a lot of artists come to Melbourne from different places, thinking it's a good place to practice, I think, and I guess I was one of them.
Cultural capital of Australia.
Yeah, so I was mainly trying to do like spoken word stuff, and I had like a job working in a fruit shop, and I lost that job like just before Christmas.
Right.
And then I guess I was thinking, I have to do something to pay bills and all of this stuff. I had a friend who did busking, and I thought that was like a really interesting lifestyle. Because she was a singer and played the guitar, and she would just go out and come back in a couple of hours of $100
wow.
or whatever.
Doing something that she loved as well, right?
Practicing art. And I was like, I'd love to do that, but I'm not a musician. I write poetry, and I guess I'm not comfortable with doing spoken word out in the streets. So it's more of an introverted way. But I looked it up and realised that I found out somewhere, I forget the name of it, but there's a few people around the world that do what I do.
Do poetry via type.
Yeah. So I just found this one particular man that's doing it in the States somewhere, and I thought, sounds like a good idea. Yeah. So I borrowed a typewriter, and I tried one day in St Kilda, and I was very nervous. Yeah. I actually had, I think, 3 bourbon and cokes. And it took me hours to actually set up. I was very nervous.
How was the poem after 3 bourbon and cokes?
I think it was okay, actually. Yeah. So I remember the first poem I wrote. It's called Baby Daddy Looks Like Jesus. Yeah. And it was a woman that was wanted a poem for a partner who was the father of a child. Yeah. And who I met in Tasmania like a year later. Yeah, wow, again. Okay. Yes, and because I waited for this so long, that first day I only wrote 2 poems, but it sort of felt like it was working.
And you set up the sign on the street and said, what does your sign say now? It says,
it's always said the same thing because I'm superstitious about it.
Right.
It says, I will write you a poem on any topic you choose. Come and say hi. Yeah.
Beautiful. And it's worked, obviously.
Yeah, and so I guess I just kept doing it after that. And it's been good because when I've gone to other places, as long as it's like a sort of population of people, then I can just set up a typewriter and do it usually.
Incredible. So it sort of allows you to have almost like a mobile kind of workspace. Wherever you want to go, there's people who will
pay for poems, right?
Yeah, amazingly. I'm still amazed.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I actually wanted to chat to you, because I find both poetry and typewriting, which I love, I've had a typewriter, to be kind of out of fashion in a way, and a lot of people don't read poetry, and certainly a lot of people don't use typewriters because of, you know, digital technologies and stuff. So you've put both things together, and it seems to be working really well in terms of the interest you get on the streets and the amount of people who kind of share your stuff online. Or so why do you think that is? What sort of, in typewriting and poetry, have you managed to sort of touch on?
I think it's hard to say, because I am actually amazed that people like it, but I think people are interested in poetry, like, as an art form. I think maybe sometimes it feels a bit inaccessible to some people, or like something that, you know, you can't do or engage with unless you have like a certain type of...
Where you studied it at school or something?
Like something that's a bit too intellectual or something like that. But so being on the street is very accessible. And I guess like the typewriter it began as a sort of, I guess, like a gimmick, which is unusual to see and hear.
Yeah, it's cool. It's poetry in itself, music with a typewriter.
So, I guess the fact that it's sort of personalised is an attraction to people, so they have something to take away that hasn't existed before, and it's theirs.
It's quite special. People like to think, though, that someone might, you know, write them a poem one day, and that's why I think, you know, it's nice to be able to, you know, have you there to sort of provide that beautiful experience if someone wants, you know, to feel better or something, or to... I mean, you wrote mine in 15 minutes, and I couldn't believe that, you know, you get a poem on demand, basically, because you think maybe I'll get a love letter in the mail one day, a poem or something, but and so what do you like about the typewriter as a medium in itself, though? Like, if you think about, you know, you've referred to it as an honesty machine, right? Because you can't delete what you've written and stuff like that, but is it different to writing with pen or on a computer? It's very physical, and you have to hit the keys a lot harder than you would be able to on a laptop or PC. So there's that kind of dynamic to it. So you're feeling like, if you're feeling something like a strong emotion, you sort of can take it out on the machine and it's fine, it's good. So there's that. And I think, like, because depending on like the position of the ribbon and the pressure of your finger, like, it always looks different. So you can type an A and it will be different each time, if you know what I mean. And the differences in paper as well, right? The quality of paper, that might be quite fibrous, or thick paper, like cardboard even sometimes. Have you seen any poetry by E. Cummings?
A little bit,
like the poems that he wrote are kind of like in that lovely typewriter font. But and then they experiment with the different like structure of it as well, and so like you might, it's like the typography is different as well, and the way the poems are laid out, which I think the typewriter kind of allows you to do as well, right? You know?
Totally.
So thinking back to you know, you and your work as a poet, who have been some of your biggest influences, and what poetry do you like to read?
I think probably growing up, I was introduced to Janet Frame, who I don't know if you know, but she's a New Zealand writer. She died, like, I think a few years ago, but she was definitely the biggest influence on me growing up. And she was she wrote a lot of poetry. She had an interesting sort of life. She was in a mental institution for, like, I think about almost a decade. But she, amazing stuff. I think in some ways, like, because I grew up with her, and like it was a near, kind of near, like, familiar places that were in her books to where I grew up. Like,
so
around,
she was writing about, like, parts of New Zealand that you
knew,
that
I knew, and and I guess even the people that she was writing about, like, in her family, because she wrote 3 volumes of an autobiography, and kind of knew those kinds of people and all of that sort of stuff, and
she was quite an awkward person like me. So, yeah, intensified with her. Yeah, and then...
Do you read much poetry now, or is it important as a writer to be reading and
Yeah.
sort of absorbing new material
Yeah.
while you're writing as well?
Yeah, well, I really like to go to spoken word events
Yeah.
in Melbourne, and just sort of be interested. I guess they're kind of like my peers, but
Is there a big spoken word community or
Yeah, there
poetry
is.
community in Melbourne?
Yeah, there's definitely like a really strong one. Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Don't know how big it is. We'll sort of see the same faces everywhere, but like a lot of new people kind of
That's
join
awesome.
and come. But yeah, almost every night there's an event. And I enjoy that, and like hearing the poetry sort of being read, and yeah, it's a kind of a feeling of people sharing with each other on the same level.
So you mentioned before about when you started in St Kilda doing typewritten poetry, that you do the typewriter obviously because it's physical and it lasts, and people can, you know, purchase it on the street for, you know, let's say $10 or $20, whatever it costs for a poem, and that's different to the verbal kind of spoken poetry, obviously, from a street corner. But how do you notice a difference in the poetry you do verbally rather than the stuff you write?
Yeah. It's kind of strange, but I guess when I do my personal writing, it's like a big deal for me to share it.
Yeah.
Like because I'm doing it with a different kind of mentality, I guess. Writing like purely for myself,
Right.
from myself.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more personal. Whereas writing on the street, it's the other person sort of participating and creating the poem. So I think, it was still kind of nerve-wracking when someone reads the poem in front of me. But
Is that what happened? Because I just picked mine up and I walked off.
People, it's about 50-50 that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the reason I wanted to chat as well today is because I find the street artistry or the performance of being a typewriter poet or a street poet fascinating, because, you know, the writing process is so intensely personal often, and it takes a long time, right? For me especially, I'm a procrastinator. But, you know, having to turn something out in 15 minutes that, you know, people, you know, obviously might read in front of you, like, well, it's an interesting kind of experience, isn't it? Yeah, rather than sort of being able to sort of write in the comfort of your living room or, you know, sort of away from...
Yeah, I think it's actually changed the way I write as well, because I guess before I would want quiet and, you know, but now I tend to want to write like outside or... So it's kind of changed.
That's cool. So talk me through the process in terms of the creative process. If I come up and I request something, how does it work on Swanson Street for people? They come and give you a prompt or ask you to write about something? Or?
Yeah, so usually they'll come up and they'll just ask like questions like how much and how long does it take? Sometimes they'll have something already in mind. Sometimes they'll need to think a bit. So I just say it's up to you, whatever.
Anything. Could be a poem.
It can be anything like a word or a story.
Like,
or
you know, like
anything.
a laptop or electric switches or something like random and just normal, like
I actually
or things like love or something, right?
Yeah, love is obviously a common one, which is good. Glad it's not hate.
So when I came to you and I said, I was in a rush, and you very generously squeezed me into your schedule, and I said, I'd love a poem about new beginnings or starting over, I think it was. And it was actually for a friend who was heading overseas for 6 months. But you wrote such a beautiful poem, but like when I gave you that prompt, like what was the process for you then?
From what I remember, you didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me much.
Yeah, exactly. It was just but then I couldn't believe the poem was so perfect. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how it was.
Oh, that's good. So I think in those situations, it's, I guess I kind of write for myself, which is I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing about art in general, because you have to it's like about introspection or whatever, and it's almost a selfish thing. But then when you share it, you find that people resonate.
Have the same feeling or something. Yeah.
So I guess that's what I will do, because almost anything, any topic, like I can find some way of relating to it, I guess, from my own life or experience. And it's like, I mean, there's lots of common things that, like, regardless of our background or whatever, that we share as human beings. So,
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's sort of like a way of having a conversation almost with people across time or in different countries as well, who might, read your poems and think back to a feeling or something, or you might read a poem, like you mentioned about the New Zealand poet you follow, about, a different landscape, right? So you can kind of be transported to a different, geography or time or, headspace. Or emotional landscape as well through reading poems.
So I guess that's the other thing, like sometimes people will give me a topic which I don't know about, like, for example...
Nuclear physics.
Well, I think that's actually happened.
Okay.
Or like a media, like a TV show that I've never seen or know nothing about, often with kids. Or country I haven't been to, but I usually try and ask them, like, why do you like that show? Or,
so you do a bit of like an interview then with clients. Okay, cool.
So what do you like about that show? And they'll tell me.
Right.
And then I'll write about that sort of feeling that they have about the show.
Oh, how beautiful. I sort of wish I'd actually stayed longer and then had a chat to you about the prompt for my poem, but I didn't realise. That's cool. What's it like with children who ask for poems? Because I think, in a way, the kind of the imagination of children is what a lot of writers need, and that kind of like, innocence or... So do you notice the difference between the sort of stuff that little kids ask compared to adults?
Like they'll... a lot of things about dogs and ponies and stuff. But they're great. I love writing for kids. It's probably my favourite thing.
Come.
I just love that they are interested and they're so excited and honest and open about their excitement. And so they're not worried about money or time or anything.
No.
Their parents are worried about that.
Yes.
They're just like, and they want to know what the typewriter is. And
do they watch like the keys and the letters appearing?
Yeah.
Be so different because a lot of kids grow up now entirely with screens and digital stuff.
Yeah.
Do they ask questions about it themselves, or
and sometimes if it seems like okay, then like get them to write their name or whatever.
It's fun.
But often they will ask for a poem about their family or their mum or whatever, which is really cute.
It might be a good segue. There's a nice poem in the National Arboretum in Canberra, which I think is a place where trees are kept or something like that. The plaque in the children's garden at the National Arboretum Canberra includes words adapted from a poem you wrote. If you'd like to read the poem and tell us a bit about the story, that'd be great.
So it's just a few lines of a poem, I think. It's for the children to explore the secret corners of our natural world, to be surrounded by the beauty of the ground and wild wonder of our earth. And
tell me about that poem. How did you...
I was in Sydney, I think in Newtown, and it was just a man came up and he told me that he was... I can't remember. It was a really short conversation, but he was involved in this. What is it?
Arboretum.
Arboretum. Yeah. So
I'm
I didn't
Google
know.
arboretum
I didn't
right
know
now.
the word at the time, but it's sort of like a playground. But with.
An arboretum is a botanical garden devoted to trees, and there's a children's garden obviously within that. That's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Might be a good idea to try to get that arboretum word in a poem tonight or something.
Let's try. So he just asked me, explained that he was involved in the sub-rate, and I think he was in the bar, like it was a pub. Like,
Yeah.
he was coming out, he was
That's
quite
funny.
drunk, and
Yeah.
told me that he would like a poem about children in this playground, so I wrote it. And I didn't know, like, sometimes people will, sometimes they'll say, I want a poem. Like, a lot of people will say, I want to make a song out of your poem or something like that, and you don't really hear back from them.
Okay.
But, that was true, and I only found out like a while later, because I occasionally Google my name.
Yeah. Oh, who doesn't? Yeah.
I saw that it was there. So
Oh wow, that's really
good.
beautiful.
Yeah, but I haven't been there yet. I'll have to
You
go
should
there.
go and see your words up in the plaque. It's
Yeah.
a really special experience, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, when I go to Canberra.
Yes, indeed. So you obviously have worked in Newtown and I think in Hobart as well, and all over the country.
Yeah.
Could even work overseas too. But thinking back to Swanston Street here in Melbourne CBD, you made a post on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, I think, about Melbourne City Council making changes to the busking permits and things.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak a bit about that and I guess the impact on the community of street performers and artists?
Well, I guess, there are a lot of people, if you notice, especially on like a Saturday, for example, like you walk down Swanston Street, and like almost every corner there's someone doing something. So I guess they are wanting to define what busking is.
Right.
Um,
So every busker needs a permit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, okay, cool.
and I mean it's really quite. There's a bit of a process to go to get one, but it's like really cheap and pretty easy to get. So I guess they wanted to define what busking is,
Right.
and so within their definition, they were saying it's people that are providing entertainment without charge.
Right.
So they were saying, like a musician, for example, like they're playing a song, and even if you don't give them money, you can still hear their music.
Right. That's busking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, and also according to them, like for someone like a portrait artist or me and what I do, or like a balloon artist, we're not providing entertainment without charge, which I think is not. I don't actually agree.
Yeah.
Because I think people like to see that stuff.
Exactly. I mean, have it as part of the visual amenity in a way. It sort of is entertainment.
People don't realise like how often we actually do this stuff for free at our own discretion.
Yeah.
In certain cases. But
So what's the implication of the new busking permits are obviously a bit more expensive and people might not.
It's a lot more expensive. It's like
Right.
$300, I think, and compared to like $20.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I can't really afford that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You should make a GoFundMe page or something. I'm sure people would help support. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if I mean, I kind of think. Yeah.
But it's so important to have people like you on Swanston Street and the other performers, buskers, artists, entertainers as well, because I think that's what goes to the heart of why Melbourne's such a creative and interesting cultural city. And I don't know, it's sort of hard to think about Swanston Street without a lot of those performers there. So
I think it's a sort of bureaucratic boundary, which doesn't really make sense.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the busking community like in Melbourne? I mean, is it sort of, do you guys talk to each other? Or
A lot of us do, yeah. I mean, there's people that you want to avoid. But I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot of really interesting people. Obviously, we're all a bit unusual.
From different walks of life as well.
Yeah,
from all over the world.
Yeah. And there's a few that I really enjoy talking to. There's others like, I don't know, it's kind of want to keep like a certain amount of distance at first, at least.
Sure.
Because you do see these people like every day. And you sort of need to negotiate space and
stuff like
it's a really
that. Keep
unique
good
workplace,
terms.
isn't it? Yeah, because you sort of, you've got to sort of negotiate all that stuff, I guess, case by case and individually. There's no, like an HR department to go to sort of like resolve issues you might be having or something, or And so, obviously, being an outdoors workspace, I mean, what's it like kind of observing the city throughout the day? What in terms of the hours that you work week to week, but also throughout the year and the changes in Melbourne. I mean, it's a pretty fascinating perspective, being out there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the city is a place where generally people kind of go through on their way to somewhere else.
Like a transient kind of place,
Yeah. It's sort of like an airport. But, obviously there's a lot of people that work there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that work outside or like very close to the street, or just hang out. There's, a lot of regular faces, some that I know and have spoken to, and others that I don't know at all, but I see every day. I don't know why they're there.
Right.
Yeah, and some I might be on a nodding basis with.
You've got that's a relationship, not you might not say a word to each other ever, but
no, that's right. Yeah,
that's funny.
And then you can be like that for 1 or 2 years, and then for one reason or another, you can have a conversation, and get on all right or not. But
and is it? Sometimes I imagine you must see some pretty confronting stuff being in Swanston Street. At night. I know sometimes there are like fights and things, but I guess you would be kind of up close to a lot of social issues in Melbourne. I'm thinking about like homelessness, for instance, and people with mental ill health and things like that as well. I mean, I think a lot is surfaced in the city and in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, there's like people that are visibly homeless, and it's hard to. I mean, like, I think that I've experienced homelessness myself, and I know that people that are experiencing homelessness, you wouldn't know by walking past them on the street.
Right.
But there's a group of people that are very visible. Usually those people are dealing with addiction or mental health issues. And the mental health stuff is really sad, actually. It's like this. It's sad that they're out in the streets, and basically the only kind of. I mean, the police will sort of deal with them.
But they're outside those formal support and structures. They've really fallen through the cracks. And I find it fascinating as a society that people, can walk by so easily. People who are visibly homeless or who have they're visibly affected by mental health episodes and things. And we often just sort of turn our eye to it. We avert our gaze.
Yeah. And there was, for a while, I think it's kind of calmed down a bit, but for a while there was a certain person who would, I don't want to reveal anything about the person, but they would collapse, almost, it seemed like it was happening every day for a while. And then a passerby would actually call the ambulance, like someone's on the ground. Obviously not sleeping or anything, they obviously just collapsed. And then the police and the ambulance would come and take this person away. But then I would see them again the next day.
Doing the same,
and the same thing would happen.
Right.
And it was just, that kind of stuff is really frustrating to see. I don't know what illness or problem that person had. I know they probably take some substances, but they don't always seem like they're really high or anything, so I don't know. I did see the ambulance giving them food, so maybe it was diabetes or something.
Right. But it's quite shocking to think that, someone with those conditions is out in the street and without support and care and kind of like a place to. So how do you deal with maybe those kinds of issues? I think things like drug addiction or substance abuse. I mean, is there a way in which the people on the streets? I mean, where do they turn to? Is it mostly the police and
well, there are like services like the Salvos up the road on Burke Street, which is better than nothing, but they, obviously are not helping a lot of these people, whether that's for whatever reason, but I know people can go there like to eat, possibly sleep.
Do you think you'd ever write like a book of, or publish a book or something about the kinds of issues and stories that kind of get overlooked on the streets as well, like the people we've spoken about, and the kind of the social issues as well? Because I think, you've obviously got a real talent for writing and communication, and to be able to tell those stories could be quite powerful, through poetry or through writing itself.
I think that if I do publish something of my own, then it will be about that. Yeah.
You should go for it.
Working on it. It's, I don't know. It's partly the time and partly like actually committing to doing.
Yeah. So, final kind of question is, we mentioned before about the perspective of society and people from the street in terms of the issues we spoke about, but also just the people coming in and out of the city. The way we change in winter as well, and it sort of becomes a bit more kind of rugged up and indoors. But what kind of are your observations about Melbourne and our society that you kind of have drawn over the last 7 years since moving here from New Zealand?
Well, so I have to think about that one.
Sorry, it's too many questions rolled into one, I think. But
I don't know. Oh, I mean, people are people wherever you go, I guess. I do think, like Melbourne, I find it calmer than Sydney.
Right.
People are calmer. I actually like how there's so much stuff happening on the street and so much busking. I hope that continues, with like especially the more creative stuff.
Absolutely,
yeah. To keep going, because I really like that part of Melbourne City. I don't think that I really see that. I have seen that like in other
cities. No,
other
I think that's what
in New Zealand,
it's quite unique, isn't
Australia.
it?
Yeah, just that prominence of art, and I think I mean, one thing that was good about like Newtown and that area in Sydney is that people didn't need permits, or a permit was really easy to get. You sort of just sign up online and it's free. And then but I think that actually lends itself to it being more creative and interesting and stuff like that. So I hope Melbourne continues to be like that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Melbourne's famously sort of temperamental in the weather, which I kind of like.
Keeps you on your toes, especially working outdoors.
But it's good to have a bit of variety, I think. But, I think that might have an effect on. Maybe it helps. Maybe it makes people more creative.
Would you like to read one or two of your poems, your favourite ones? Did you manage to bring a few along?
Probably. Okay, so this is called She. She bends over delicate frame, crane-like, seeking discarded ends of ciggies, and now and then she finds something better. Excuse me, relentless questions emanating from this fashion model figure beneath dirty sweats. Avoid eye contact, she's sober and desperate. There's that early morning voice in the midst of an evening, that particular junkie croak, letting you know for certain she's after something murky. Don't glance, even once, at this dirty scene of human need. It only inspires fear. Her boyfriend screams after her, no closed windows in her world. Shut your mouth, you stupid slut, you're embarrassing me. She screams back, her words too vulgar even for poetry. Walk on,
look for poverty more well represented, which must exist somewhere on subsistence welfare with more admirable ethics. She is clearly an addict, which is worse than your habits, indulged in behind closed windows, and only ever an Uber away. But she smells like a hint of bin juice and ongoing threats hunting for a comfortable reflection, but I look away. No acknowledgement made of where we met that day, over there around the corner, South Melbourne Beach, sharing sandy sob stories, a drunken remark on the track marks running like the riverways up her arms, and only a smile for a response, sharing a flame. I lingered for the length of about 4 cigarettes, and she said, keep that lighter, I have another.
That's beautiful, thank you.
All right.
It's like a quite an intricate story as well.
Yeah.
How did she come to write that poem?
I think it's an amalgamation of different people and events
Right.
that I see on the streets.
Yeah.
It's not about like a particular individual.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sort of touched on those issues we spoke through earlier as well, didn't it?
I guess it's why
Yeah.
it came to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have another one you wanted to...
So this is about the Merri Creek in North Melbourne. I believe it's called Merri for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong. I believe that's the name of the creek. Merri, have you ever tried making friends with this creek, with the shallow end where, if you squint, you can imagine the world 300 years ago? Have you tried asking the creek what she thinks, what she knows about blood and progression and all the other things travelling within her? Have you asked the birds if they're okay with the internet, if that makes up for their homeless feathers? They do not flutter for your pleasure. The music and majestic beauty of the birds, the water, have nothing to do with you. They simply are. You and your dubious ethical stance have no business walking past, as if you imagine yourself separate. No, lean into it, please, and merge our species, for you must tell the dirt and the creek and the birds your name before learning theirs.
That was a very beautiful poem about a special and sacred part of Melbourne. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Angie.
Thank you.